So hey guys, welcome to another Warframe video, and today we're gonna talk a little bit about Hata-Satya, one of the unique weapon-specific mods that you can get in Heart of Deimos. Now, all of these weapon-specific mods are acquired from Father for 20,000 standing, and Hata-Satya is a Soma Prime-specific mod that gives you 1.2% crit chance every time you hit something until you reload or holster the weapon. Though it doesn't stack infinitely, it has a cap of 500%. Now, the Soma Prime is at its strongest in my opinion when running what I call a viral munitions build, which is fairly self-explanatory, right? You go for both crit and status and you focus on viral and you add in hunter munitions for the extra slash procs. Because even though the status isn't very high, the fire rate is, so you end up rocking a lot of status anyway. Now the Hata-Satya mod will go into a mod slot that would normally be reserved for either Prime Tread if you want to go for fire rate and punch through, Argent Scope if you want more crit chance, or Bladed Rounds if you want more crit damage. And I'm telling you all of this so that you know what this mod is going up against. Now, one thing that helps this mod a lot is Energized Munitions, which is a helmet specific ability that gives you 75% ammo efficiency, which basically means you're only going to use ammo with 1 out of every 4 shots. However, with 50 base energy cost and only 5-second base duration, this is fairly difficult to sustain. But it's not impossible, so if you combine the two, you can very easily get some decent crit numbers out of this mod. So a pretty good mod overall, right? Well, that's the thing. This is a simulacrum mod, right? You take it into the simulacrum, you put everything up, you combo everything together, you get into the perfect situation and you're like, yes, the crit chance, most exquisite. And then you take it into a normal mission and you're like, okay, maybe not so much. It's not entirely bad though. It mostly depends on your accuracy and your trigger discipline, and your ability to constantly generate energy and keep up energized munitions at all times. So it's really good in theory. But in practice, for me and the way I play, so my accuracy and my trigger discipline, it barely keeps up with Argent Scope if I'm using energized munitions as much as possible. And unfortunately, it doesn't even come close if I'm not using energized munitions. And there are multiple reasons for this. Number one, the mod system, right? The way mods work, and because of the limited mod space we have, you can't add a magazine mod onto the weapon, which would work really well with it, because any crit you gain by adding a magazine mod on average is immediately going to be outweighed by the amount of damage you lose by putting the mod on. Number two, you only get the stacking crit bonus if you hit an enemy that's alive, and I know that might sound a little bit weird, but let me explain. The Soma Prime is a fully automatic primary rifle with a decent amount of fire rate and a spool-up mechanic that gives you even more fire rate. So chances are, when you pull the trigger, you're not just gonna fire one shot, you're instead gonna fire a burst of shots, and if the first shot kills the enemy, then you don't get any crit from the follow-up shots and you essentially waste them. So essentially, the stronger your weapon setup is, the harder it becomes to actually stack the crit from the mod. And number three, even if you can get enough crit to beat Argent Scope, it's gonna take a while to get there, especially if you have squishier enemies. So all in all, I don't think this mod is worth it at all, unless you're an absolute god amongst men and you have amazing trigger discipline and incredible accuracy. Because for me personally, I was averaging somewhere around 2 to 250% increased crit chance by the time I emptied out my magazine with energized munitions, and that is just not enough, especially considering that I was trying much harder not to waste any ammo. And without energized munitions, it was kind of all over the place, and it depended mostly on the beefiness of the enemies, and I was sitting somewhere between 80 and 160% crit by the time I emptied out my magazine, which is just straight up worse than Argent Scope. And most importantly for me, it just made the weapon less fun, which is like the worst thing a mod can do. I actually feel like this would work much better on a semi-auto weapon instead. Just make the crit bonus much higher, but put it on a semi-auto weapon, where it's much easier not to waste shots by accident. And I haven't even mentioned chronic reloading yet, which is something I like to do. And if you don't know what that is, it's when you fire off 3 shots out of 200 and you're like, oh boy, I better reload just in case I need those 3 extra bullets. So if like me, you're a chronic reloader, don't even look at this mod, especially since you can't cancel out of it because the buff drops as soon as you start reloading. So yeah, the Hata-Satya mod can be good if you're a god amongst men and you never miss and you always fire the right amount of shots to kill your target, but for us mere mortals, not so much. And that is pretty much all I wanted to say, so I thank you very much for watching. As always guys, I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.